Right. Welcome back to yet another episode of our amazing Cutting Edge. Couldn't be more cutting, I guess. So we have got yet another guest and another co-host. So let's go by co-host first. Co-host, who are you? Can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Hi, Ben. My name is Matt Shores. I'm your colleague in the School of Languages and Cultures. I am a senior lecturer in Japanese studies. I focus on literature and entertainment, and I have a specific interest in the comic storytelling of Japan. It's called rakugo.
Right. And we've got the guest. Guest, who are you? What are you doing?
Who am I? What am I doing? I'm sitting here in a comfortable chair drinking water. My name is Ronald Stewart. I'm from Australia originally. I don't know whether my voice sounds like that now, maybe. But I work at Daito Bunka University in Japan in the Sociology department as a professor. And I teach comic studies, multiculturalism, and English.
See, too easy. Like these questions are. I'm always saying to people, too easy. We need to get the hard ones out first. So, with that, we're going to start with our first question. Matt, you've got that one.
Great. I've been meaning to meet you for a long time, Ron. I'm glad we finally have the opportunity to meet here for the first time, and I'm looking forward to our discussion. What's the main focus of your research work on Japanese political cartooning?
Okay. It's a mishmash of different things. I've looked mostly at early cartooning, so representation of illness and of nation and ethnicity in early 20th century cartooning. I've looked at the way puns were used and visual puns were used in late 19th century political cartooning. And I actually drew on some humour theory for that, the SSTH.
Well, can you just explain quickly what that exactly is? What it stands for?
Yeah. It's the script-based semantic theory of humour.
Right.
I think Arturo and
Can't have been that great if you got
No. It's a very important theory.
Right.
And that was picked up by someone who studied Japanese kyoka. And most of these punning things are about images, not images, about text and about single puns. So to work on cartoons that have multiple puns in them and visual stuff as well, I had to sort of like tweak the theory a bit. Yeah.
The kyoka are comic poems that go back hundreds of years, and they're
Right.
wordplay based, right? And a number of humorous themes in those. Yeah.
It's usually a pivot word in them. But these cartoons had like tens of like puns in them. And now I'm looking at a cartoonist called Kitazawa Rakuten, who it'll be the 150th anniversary of his birth next year, and there'll be an exhibition. Right. So I'm looking at helping out with that, doing research to supplement that, and also publications after that. And that's a step towards doing a full history of modern Japanese political cartooning. From late 19th century till the present, because there is none.
You heard it. We're giving all the goodies away, and Ron's not busy at all, it sounds like it. Cool. Ron, with that, we go straight to the next item here on our little list. So with Japanese political cartooning, how did it begin and what influenced its early development? Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Well, there's been satire in Japanese visual arts for a long time, and people trace it back to the 12th century. A scroll called the Choji Giga. Once you get into Edo period, you start getting satire in different publications and stuff like that. But there's very strict rules. You couldn't mention...
we love rules. Tell us them all.
You couldn't mention the government or the ruling class in any publications from about 1780. Towards the end of the so-called Edo period, which ended in 1868, you get a weakening of the government, the last couple of decades of that, and you start getting more of it. But you don't really get like periodical publications with cartoons as we'd recognize them until the end of that period. So after 1868, about 6 years later, those rules were lifted, basically. And there was a boom in publications. A lot of them were centered around political ideas or political parties or had agendas to them.
Can you give us an example of that?
Example? So one was actually based on the magazine Punch in England, and they were for the freedom of popular people's rights, Jimin Kenka, Jimin Ken Undo, and they sort of agitated for a parliament and a constitution, so people would have voting rights. And they used overseas magazines as a model for that. Yeah.
Brilliant. Matt?
Yeah, well, I've lived in the West, and I've spent some time in Japan myself, and I've seen political cartoons, but I haven't really, gone deep into them. Could you tell me and us, our listeners, some of the differences that you found between Japanese political cartoons and Western ones?
Over the history of 130, 150 years of political cartooning, there's been quite a bit of change, but looking at contemporary ones and just sort of, I did a study of disaster cartoons after the 3/11 triple disaster in Japan with the tsunami and the meltdown and the earthquake. I compared them with American cartoons, and I tried to focus on some of the differences. So for a start, in newspapers, where you'd normally find them anyway, they're smaller.
Yeah.
And probably because of this reason, they're stylistically different. I mean, the characters are quite squat. They're cute in a way. And you don't have the sort of ugliness of a Peter Rowe cartoon you'd have in Australia. There's fewer in Japan. They don't have as much. They tend to be in black and white, which is has changed totally here in the US, in England, in Australia. People working in the industry are really old. In
Japan,
in Hari Sunao in Asahi, one of the main newspapers, is 92 years old. His younger colleague is in his mid 80s. Yamada Shin. So he's so they're getting the people who started in the 60s are still working now.
Does that limit, say, change, innovation in the field? Are, say, younger artists required to
by younger
get in line?
So 50 and up.
Yeah.
Well, I was talking to some cartoonists from Kyoto Tsushin or Kyoto News, and they're a younger batch in the 50s and 60s, and they had a new person come in their 30s who come out of a Kyoto Seika, which is a manga school, drawing comics.
Right.
And they're teaching her how to draw political cartoons, but at the same time they're learning a lot from her stylistically. A very different way
so
of
there
drawing.
is an exchange of some sort.
In some places within the industry, yes.
It's fascinating. And I mean, just because you already touched on it, but can you tell us a bit more about why? So, let's see, you see a Japanese cartoon, like editorial cartoon, and it feels kind of like familiar, maybe to Western audiences, but still kind of also not. So there's a specific, element about it that might be closed off to non-Japanese audiences. Can you maybe talk a bit about that? So this duality, I know this, but it's still very much different.
It looks similar because they're contextually in the same spots you'd find in the West. You have it in the newspaper, in the what do you call it, the comments pages or the editorial page, or in the politics page. So there's that. The context is the same. They're basically drawing on similar symbols, which makes them similar. But and also over the years, there's been lots of stylistically. They've drawn on Western artists. The artist I'm studying, Kitazawa Rakuten, actually learned to draw off an Australian called Frank Nankerville. Okamoto Ippei was a fan of George Grosz in Germany.
Oh, right.
And Yokoyama Taizo, one of the most important post-war cartoonists, was a big fan of Saul Steinberg in the US. So there's been influences coming in, but also when you look at them, they look something similar, but just they're culturally embedded. The puns, the references to historical figures, they often do that a lot.
I mean, can you give us an example just for that? Like this embeddedness?
Embeddedness?
I mean, you mentioned it with the Fukushima. I mean, just, like something that I guess the Japanese audiences would pick up on immediately.
Just a visual pun. And actually, younger Japanese may not get this either at the moment. It was just going back to a cartoon I'm really familiar with is during the Russo-Japanese War, you have a picture of the Tsar biting his navel. And the Japanese people, the image looks Western. It's done. It's a lithographed cartoon.
So can you repeat that? So he's like biting.
He's biting his navel. He's bent over, crouched over. He's lifted off his throne, and he's biting his belly button, his navel. So
Okay. Now you've drawn the picture.
and that's a Japanese expression for someone being at a loss of what to do. So they've just visualized that, and it's just I can see it's Cesar. What the hell is he doing?
Yeah.
And we're not asking Ron now to recreate this here, so
yes.
that's fine. You don't have to point.
I don't think I have the ability to actually.
Well, a bit of yoga is never hurt, but I think that's kind of the point. To really get to these ideas about the difference and how actually communicative these ideas are.
And some things are just orthographic because of the Japanese language. I mean, you can draw the image of someone's iris in the shape of a female to make them into a womanizer, which people wouldn't really recognize if they didn't know kanji, the Japanese Sino-Japanese characters. Yeah.
Oh, so the character is in their eyes for women.
So yeah.
I see.
And I mean, you've been living in Japan for like how long now?
28 years.
And so, like, how long did it take you, I guess, to really kind of get into this kind of, familiarity with these signs? Because you, I guess, had to learn it like almost another language, like these signs and how to spot like the iris and this thing.
I think cartoon literacy, even in any country, probably the more you read them, the more you can read them. It's like a positive loop you're getting into there. So it's taken me quite a while, not too long. I still can't understand some, but Japanese can't understand all of them either. But reading books about cartoons with descriptions in them helps a lot, and working up to be able to read independently.
Right. And with that, Matt, go to you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's just fascinating. So what historical and cultural factors contribute to the unique trajectory of Japanese political cartooning?
As you all know, Japan went through a dark period leading to the war at the beginning of the 20th century. And during that period, a lot of work was suppressed, or people were too scared to actually draw critical cartoons. During the war itself, there was a lack of paper. It was used as an excuse to actually cut down on the amount of cartoons being drawn. Going back even further, I said that in the beginning of the Meiji period, which is the start of the new nation after 1868, the regulations from the previous period were lifted, and there was just like a flourish of new publications and a boom in humour magazines. But soon after that started, politicians started to push back on that and make more regulations about this. After the war, there's no government censorship. In the Constitution, they can't censor things. But what happens now, newspapers become more corporatized. They don't like to offend people. They don't like to offend their sponsors. So there's a lot of internal regulation and self-censorship because of that.
Right.
What else happens? There's another reason. Politically, you've had the same party in power post-war for 70 years or so, I think. Almost. They've been out just a couple of times. Just
Bit
briefly.
of a traditionalist perspective on politics.
So I think that's one of the reasons why there's sort of apathy to politics in general. So a lot of people are not so interested in it. So political cartooning has a much lower profile. So there's not as much about as you'd find in other countries. So that's another thing. And also a big influence on what can be drawn, what is drawn, what is not drawn, is there's a heap of taboos with regards to these. So you can't draw the royal family, you can't draw the organised crime, Yakuza. You can't normally draw businesses. That's out. The newspapers don't like that.
Some of the things you'd think that artists would most want to be drawing. So those are just out because the newspapers say no, or there are laws against.
I think there'd be sort of like the editors would be like reluctant to do it. There's
too much of a risk, perhaps.
And because you had people like the film director Itami Juzo, who whether he actually was killed by Yakuza is still up in question, but his attacks on them and his satirizing and parodying them in his movies led him to a suspicious short life.
Suspicious life.
And there's been other incidents too with right-wing groups where they've come in. A guy who felt offended by a cartoon came in and shot himself a year later in the editor's editorial office. And the cartoonist actually did the cartoon who offended him just stopped doing cartoons attacking the right wing after that. Other things are just there's no protections in Japan for legal protections for doing satire and parody. So if you pick up a copyrighted character and try to do something with that to make a cartoon, you'll get bonked on the head.
Right. So just because we're almost out of time,
Okay.
and I don't want to interrupt this amazingly, suspiciously short flow of life over there, you're fine? Like nothing's happening to you? You're studying all of this, so you're fine?
No. Although what happens, because you can't really do aggressive cartoons in the print media, a lot of cartoonists actually form groups and they have small exhibitions of their original works in little galleries. And there you'll find much more aggressive stuff. And I'm actually participating in some of these. And a lot of them you wouldn't want to actually get. I'm worried about them getting out on social media too much.
Well, you find more of that in the show notes, linking all to Ron's profile. And I think that's it. We're out of time. Thanks so much, Ron, for being here today with us.
Thank you very much. That was
thank you
very
for,
interesting.
For that as well.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thanks so much. Come back anytime. I think there's so much more for you to share here on political
I'd love
cartoons.
to hear it. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much. Have a good one.
Thank you.